You won't believe what happened last weekend. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, honestly. So picture this. My boyfriend calls me ugly right in front of his buddies, dumps me in the middle of a fancy restaurant, and just strolls out, leaving me to foot the bill. As he's walking away, he shouts, "A girl like you should feel lucky I even dated you." I just sat there, smiled, and stayed calm. Yeah, I know, wild. Fast forward to this morning, my phone's blowing up. 13 missed calls from him. And here I am, still sitting on my couch, trying to process everything. I keep replaying it in my head, half expecting to realize it was all some crazy dream. But nope, my maxed out credit card and the sticky ice cream stains on my couch say otherwise. For some background, I've been with Finn for 2 years. Not a quick fling or a weekend thing, 2 actual years. We had our little routines, you know? Sunday Netflix marathons, awkward family dinners during the holidays, even that bizarre couples yoga class he made me try. Spoiler alert, we were both terrible at it. Things weren't perfect, sure, but is any relationship really? I thought we were in a good place. We'd even talked about maybe moving in together over the summer. Sure, he had his quirks, like leaving his socks everywhere, texting through movies, and always tossing out these helpful comments about how I looked. Stuff like, "That shirt kinda makes your arms look big," or "You ever think about trying a different hairstyle?" I used to chalk it up to honesty. Ugh. Looking back, I was such a doormat. So last Friday, Finn texts me out of the blue, says there's a dinner with some coworkers and he wants me to come. That was a first. Usually he'd say his work stuff was off limits, not the place for girlfriends. So naturally I was excited. I even splurged on a new outfit, RIP to my budget, and went all out getting ready. Like, full YouTube makeup tutorial mode. Pulled out the good straightener and everything. I show up at this super high-end restaurant downtown, you know the type. Tiny portions, no prices on the menu. First red flag. Finn's already seated with 2 of his coworkers, Maximus and Matteo. The vibe? Immediately off. He barely looks at me, just half stands and says, "You're late." I was like 2 minutes behind schedule because the parking was a nightmare. I sit down and he glances at my dress and goes, "Oh, you wore that?" And not in a whisper either. His friends share this awkward glance and my cheeks instantly go red. For the record, I was wearing a dark blue dress. Classy, nothing too flashy. I try to laugh it off. Was there a dress code I missed? But he just shrugs and tells me they already ordered appetizers. Cool. The next hour? Torture. Finn talks nonstop about work stuff I don't get while his buddies nod along. Every time I try to chime in, he either talks over me or corrects me like I'm some clueless kid. At one point, I mention a customer from my store and he cuts me off with, "She doesn't really get how the real business world works," waving me off like retail doesn't count. I've been managing that store for 3 years, by the way. And I'm just sitting there, starting to feel this pit in my stomach. Like, has he always been this patronizing and I just never noticed? Or is he just showing off in front of his coworkers? Either way, it was not a good look. Then Maximus asks how we met. I start to tell the story, how my best friend Isla, who also works with Finn, introduced us. But before I can even finish, Finn jumps in with, "Yeah, Isla felt bad for her. I was doing a favor, really." And then he laughs. My heart just sank. That wasn't even remotely true. In fact, Isla had warned me about his ego before setting us up, but said he was a decent guy underneath it all. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. I excused myself to the bathroom mostly to avoid crying in front of them. I duck into a stall and start texting Isla like, "What the hell is happening right now?" That's when I get a notification. Finn just tagged himself on Instagram at that same restaurant. Boys' night out. Like I didn't even exist. Isla calls right away, but I hit decline. No way I wanted the guys to hear me sobbing. I splashed some water on my face, fixed my makeup, and gave myself this pathetic little pep talk in the mirror. Just get through dinner. Stay classy. I come back to the table and they're mid-laugh, but everything goes silent when I sit down. Great. Our food arrives and Finn starts cracking jokes about what I ordered. I went with pasta, one of the cheaper things on the menu since I already had a feeling I'd be paying, and he starts in with, "Carb loading for a marathon, and bold choice for someone with your body type." Every comment stung like a tiny cut. And they just kept coming. I barely touched my plate, just moved the food around and counted the minutes until I could leave. Then Matteo changes the topic, asking Finn about a recent presentation, and Finn launches into this whole speech about how he's practically running the project now because his boss loved his ideas. Something just snapped in my head. The week before, Finn was totally freaking out over that same presentation. He kept saying he only had a 5-minute part and didn't know how he was gonna get through it. Now all of a sudden, he's acting like he was the headliner? Like he's the big boss man? It honestly felt like he was living in some alternate reality where he's the main character and we're all just background extras. Then the check arrives. The waiter sets it down on the table. Finn picks it up, glances at it for about a second, and then casually slides it across to me. I figure he's just showing me the total or something, right? Wrong. What he actually says next. I'll never forget it. He goes, "You know what? I don't think this is working." I just stare at him, waiting for him to say he's joking. But nope, he's dead serious. He follows it up with, "I've been trying, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should break up." Right there, in the middle of a crowded restaurant, with his friends sitting there watching like it's a soap opera. After 2 freaking years together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was stunned. "Are you serious right now?" I asked him. "This is how you're doing this?" He just stands up, throws on his jacket, and says, "Ugh, I still get that sinking feeling thinking about it. A girl like you should be grateful I even stayed this long. You're not exactly a prize." Then he just walks out, with Maximus and Matteo right behind him, laughing like it was all some big joke. And I'm left sitting there alone, staring at a $347 bill that included all their overpriced Wagyu appetizers and fancy cocktails. The waiter came back with this look, like he didn't even know what to say. It made the whole thing feel 10 times worse. I handed over my credit card, the one I've already maxed out thanks to holiday shopping, and somehow made it out to my car without totally breaking down. But once I was in the parking lot, I called Isla and just lost it. I was crying so hard she couldn't even make out what I was saying at first. She came straight over to my place with a pint of Ben and Jerry's and a bottle of wine, like an absolute legend. We sat on my couch while I ugly cried and stress ate cookie dough, telling her every single humiliating detail. She was furious. I mean, like, full-blown ready to drive to his apartment and throw hands. I had to talk her down. But then she got quiet, kind of suspicious. Started asking these specific questions about what Finn had said about his job, the project he mentioned, and what exactly his role was at work. Finally, she hit me with, "Aria, I don't even know how to say this, but Finn isn't who he says he is at the office." Turns out, this guy wasn't some marketing genius climbing the corporate ladder. He was the assistant. The guy who fetched coffee and booked conference rooms. That big presentation he bragged about? He just made the PowerPoint slides for the actual team doing the work. All those so-called business trips? Total lies. That fancy-sounding title on his LinkedIn? Complete fiction. I felt like such a fool. For 2 whole years he had been feeding me this made-up version of his life, and I never once thought to question it. Made me wonder what else he had lied about. After Isla left, I went full FBI mode. Scrolled through old texts, our photos, everything. And there it was, so many little red flags I'd completely missed. Weird money comments that didn't make sense. Nights he worked late, but his location showed he was across town. I couldn't sleep. My brain just kept looping that awful restaurant scene, remembering how small he made me feel. How publicly he humiliated me. Then around 3 a.m., my phone buzzes. It's a text from a number I don't know. "Hey, it's Griffin from Finn's office. Isla gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know." And that's when things took a whole new turn. Update time. First off, thank you. Seriously. Reading the comments on my last post, I actually cried. In the good way. So many of you have been unbelievably kind and supportive. It meant more than you know. A bunch of you asked for updates, so here's what went down next in this completely bonkers saga. After Griffin reached out and basically confirmed that my now ex-boyfriend had been living in a fantasy land, I spent the next few days stuck in that messy, post-breakup haze. You know the one. Crying over ice cream one minute, angrily scrolling through old couple photos the next, wondering if any of it was ever even real. My apartment? Total disaster. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry everywhere, and I think I counted at least 7 crumpled DoorDash bags. Cooking felt impossible. Even getting off the couch felt like a chore. The worst part? Those tiny moments where I'd think of something funny and instinctively go to text Finn, then remember. And every time it hit me like a second breakup. My brain was stuck in this endless loop. Did that seriously happen? How did I not see this coming? It felt like I was trapped in some bizarre alternate timeline. I hadn't even touched social media because I knew Finn would post something smug. But by Wednesday morning I caved. Curiosity won. And there it was, Finn, shirtless at the gym, grinning like he just won the lottery, with a caption that read, Level up. Know your worth. The audacity. I almost launched my phone across the room. That night, Isla dropped by with takeout and found me wrapped up in my comforter like a human burrito of sadness. She's been an absolute rock through all of this. Kept me fed, listened to me rant, even when I repeated myself for the 10th time, and not once said, "I told you so," even though she totally saw this coming. Over noodles and egg rolls, she pulled out her phone and showed me her text thread with Griffin, the coworker who'd messaged me the other night. Turns out, they'd been talking a lot, and Griffin had tea. Real piping hot, fresh off the stove kind of tea. Apparently, Finn had been telling everyone at the office that he dumped me because I was clingy and obsessed with marriage. I actually laughed out loud at that. Me? Clingy? The guy had a whole Pinterest board titled Future Home Ideas. And get this, he once claimed it was for a work presentation. But that wasn't even the worst part. Griffin told Isla the real reason Finn was panicking at work. He wasn't just lying about being some top dog in marketing. He was actually on probation. Apparently he got caught taking credit for other people's work, and there was talk he might get fired soon. All those nights he said he was working late, he was scrambling to clean up messes before someone figured it out. And those business trips? Total fabrications. I was still trying to process it all when my phone rang. It was Lila, Finn's mom. I almost didn't pick up. I mean, talk about awkward. But she's always been sweet to me, remembers my birthday, checks in about work, so I figured I owed her the courtesy. She sounded a little worried, asking if everything was okay between Finn and me. Apparently, Finn told his family we had a small argument, but we're totally fine. Small argument? This man publicly dumped me in a restaurant and stuck me with a $347 check. I didn't get into all the gritty details, I just said we were taking some space. Didn't want to drag her into the drama. But then she dropped the bombshell. She mentioned she couldn't wait to see me at Finn's birthday dinner on Saturday. Said the whole family was looking forward to it. Wait, what? Turns out Finn had told them we were still together. Not only that, he said we had some big news to share at the dinner. I nearly choked on my lo mein. I hung up in a daze while Isla stared at me like I'd grown a third eye. She was like, is he just delusional or straight up pathological? Honestly, I wasn't sure. That's when we came up with a plan. I wasn't gonna ghost his family, they'd always been kind to me and they deserved to know who Finn really was. But I wasn't out for revenge either. No yelling. No drama. Just show up, be honest, and let the truth speak for itself. The next day I met Griffin for coffee. A little weird considering we'd only connected through Finn, but he turned out to be super chill. He confirmed everything and then some. That team Finn claimed to manage? Just him and 2 interns. That huge presentation? Finn wasn't the star, he was clicking through the slides while his boss did all the talking. Griffin even admitted he'd always thought Finn's stories about me seemed off. Apparently, Finn painted me as this demanding girlfriend who expected lavish dates and non-stop attention. Meanwhile, I was the one paying for most of our outings because Finn said he was between paychecks. Yeah, right. Mid-convo, Griffin got a text from his boss asking if he could swing by for a last-minute project. He was bummed had plans, but then I got an idea. What if he had to drop something off at Finn's parents' house? During the birthday dinner? The timing would be perfect. As we talked logistics, my phone buzzed. It was a text. From Finn. His first message since the restaurant. It said, "We need to talk about what happened." I might have overreacted. Might have? I showed Griffin. He nearly spit out his coffee. Dude, he said, overreacting is getting annoyed when someone's 10 minutes late. Not public humiliation and ditching your girlfriend with a massive bill. I didn't reply. Let him sit with it. The next couple of days were a whirlwind of prep. If I was going to this dinner, I was showing up prepared. I went through old texts, matching lies to timelines, work conferences that didn't exist, coworkers that Griffin said didn't even work there, event photos Finn had posted that were actually just stock images from the company site. Friday night, Isla came over to help pick out what to wear. Part of me wanted to show up looking drop-dead gorgeous just to spite him, but we landed on something more subtle. A simple black dress, classic, clean. Ironically, it was one Finn once said made me look average. I'd always thought that was just his weird version of a compliment. Now I realized it was probably just another dig in disguise. That night, I barely slept. I kept second-guessing everything. What if this all blew up in my face? What if his family sided with him? What if I froze up and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, I was a wreck, chewed my nails down to stubs and had played out at least 17 different versions of the night in my head. Then around noon, Finn texted again. Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited. I didn't respond. Let him sit in that fantasy he built for himself. Getting ready was this weird mix of nerves and adrenaline. Isla did my hair and gave me the pep talk of a lifetime when I almost bailed. At 5:30, I got in the car and started driving. Had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much. Sat in a random parking lot doing breathing exercises I remembered from some meditation app one downloaded ages ago and never actually used. I kept asking myself, what am I doing? Is this nuts? Should I just block him and move on like a normal person? But then I pictured him at that dinner table, painting himself as the victim, spinning some completely made-up version of our breakup, and that gave me the strength I needed. No way was I letting him control the narrative again. I pulled into his parents' driveway at 6:15, fashionably late. I knew that would annoy him, which, to be honest, was a bonus. The driveway was full, so clearly the whole family was already there. I checked my lipstick in the mirror, took one last deep breath, and headed for the door. Finn's dad opened it with a big grin and hugged me like nothing was wrong. The house smelled like Lila's famous pot roast, and for a second it actually made me a little sad. I really liked his family, and this would probably be the last time I'd see them. I stepped into the living room and there was Finn laughing with a drink in hand. The moment he saw me, he froze. Didn't expect me to actually show up, I guess. His face went from surprise to full-on panic before he slapped on this awkward smile and walked over. He gave me one of those stiff hugs and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk." I just smiled, nice and loud for the whole room to hear. Of course I came. Especially since you've been telling everyone we've got big news to share tonight. His face turned the color of uncooked shrimp. Lila clapped excitedly. Oh my gosh, is this what I think it is? Ava, his sister, shot me this knowing look. His dad started cracking jokes about finally getting grandkids. Finn tried to quietly yank me toward the hallway, but then Lila called out that dinner was ready and we all needed to sit down. We took our seats at the table and Finn kept shifting in his chair like he was sitting on a cactus. That's when my phone buzzed. Text from Griffin, on my way. 15 minutes out. Finn leaned over, hissing through clenched teeth. What are you doing here? After the restaurant, I thought. I cut him off with a sweet little smile and said, loud enough for the whole table, "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family what really happened at that restaurant, Finn. I think they'd love the story." The look on his face as Lila started serving dinner? Pure panic. Worth every second of the stress it took to get there. Second update. Okay, I'm finally ready to tell you what happened at Finn's birthday dinner. Sorry for the delay. I needed a whole mental health day after that circus, plus my Wi-Fi's been a disaster. Apparently, my neighbor borrowed my password and decided to download the entire internet. So where were we? Right, me sitting at the dinner table, surrounded by Finn's family, while he nervously waited for me to blow up his cover. There we were, Finn's parents, Lila and Theo, his sister Ava, his grandma, and two cousins whose names I always mix up but pretended not to. The table was stacked with all the classics, Lila's pot roast, those dreamy mashed potatoes that are like butter-flavored clouds, and a fancy salad no one was ever going to touch but everyone would politely admire. The first 20 minutes were a whole vibe, awkward to the max. Finn kept trying to steer the conversation away from anything personal, throwing me little side-eye warnings whenever I opened my mouth. I just kept smiling and passing around the bread like I was in a rom-com dinner scene. Was it petty? Yeah, probably. Was it satisfying? Oh, absolutely. Lila was doing her best to keep things moving along, bless her heart. She kept the small talk going, asking about my job, my family, just normal stuff. But then she casually mentioned how proud they all were of Finn's big promotion, and I legit almost choked on my water. I shot a glance at Finn, and he looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. His face had turned the exact same shade as the beet sitting on his plate. He jumped in fast, rattling off some nonsense about how his team was crushing targets and how his boss was grooming him for leadership. I didn't say a word. Just nodded, sipping my drink while watching him dig his own grave, one overblown exaggeration at a time. Then out of nowhere, Theo, who's usually pretty quiet, leans in and asks Finn about the Johnson account. Apparently, Finn had been bragging to his dad about leading some huge project. Finn's response? A blur of corporate mumbo-jumbo, strategic pivots, leveraging core competencies, a whole lot of words that meant absolutely nothing. I caught Ava's eye across the table. She's the family's unofficial fact-checker, the kind who'll Google your story mid-sentence if something smells off. She raised her eyebrow at me like, "You buying any of this?" And just when I thought it couldn't get better, Lila brings up the big news. She asks if it had anything to do with taking the next step. Finn just about dropped his fork, muttering something about how now might not be the right time. Then his grandma, my absolute favorite, Queen of Zero Filter, blurts out, "So are you two moving in or what?" Finn said you were apartment hunting. I nearly laughed. The closest we'd come to that was me once suggesting we combine our Netflix accounts. Finn tried to regain control by bragging about having a company card now. Something about using it for client dinners and team outings. So I leaned in, just casually asked, "Oh yeah? What kinds of expenses are you allowed to approve?" He stammered something vague again. That's when I went for it. "Speaking of dinners," I said, all innocent, "Finn took me to this amazing place last week. What was it called again, babe? The one where you met Maximus and Mateo." Boom. His face drained of color faster than my phone battery when I opened TikTok. Seriously, mine can't even last 20 minutes. Anyone else? Before he could stammer out an answer, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Lila opened the door and exclaimed, "Griffin." What a surprise. Finn's jaw nearly hit the table. Griffin walked in looking sharp and carrying a folder, pure work mode energy. He apologized for interrupting but said he had some urgent documents Finn needed to sign for Monday. Lila, ever the gracious host, invited him to stay for cake. Finn tried to whisk Griffin away, but Theo insisted they handle it right there. "We're all family here," he said. Griffin took the empty seat next to me, one I just so happened to leave open. Finn's hand clenched around his fork so tightly I thought the thing might snap. Then Theo turned to Griffin and asked about that big presentation Finn had supposedly led. Griffin looked confused at first, then glanced at both of us like he was weighing his options. Finally he said, "Oh, it went well. Our boss presented it. Finn helped out, he and the team worked on the slides." Theo furrowed his brow. "That's not what Finn told us." I couldn't resist. "Griffin," I said sweetly, "can you tell them about Finn's promotion?" Griffin looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. He played with his napkin, clearly torn between being honest and not blowing up someone's life at a family dinner. Finn shot him a death glare. I gave him a tiny nod. Griffin cleared his throat. "Finn's an administrative assistant in the marketing department." The silence? Deafening. It was like the moment you drop your phone in a public bathroom. Everyone hears it. No one wants to talk about it. Theo slowly set his fork down. Grandma made this low sound. Ava mumbled something that definitely sounded like, "I knew it." Finn jumped in, trying to salvage it with a fake laugh. Griffin's confused. "I have multiple roles, it's complicated." But the floodgates had opened. His family started firing off questions. Specific ones. "When did you get promoted? Where's the office? Who's on your team?" He had no real answers, just vague deflections. The whole thing unraveled right there at the table. "Why did you say you had a team?" someone asked. Crickets. He didn't. "What about that corner office?" Also fake. With every question, Finn's web of lies just started unraveling right there at the dinner table. He kept glaring at me like I was the one ruining everything, like this was somehow my fault for telling the truth. Honestly, that just made me more determined to keep going. Lila, sweet Lila, tried to calm the room. She gently suggested we all have some cake and try to talk about happier things. As she headed to the kitchen, Ava turned to me, dead serious, and asked about the restaurant I mentioned earlier. I knew this was it. My moment. I took a breath and laid it all out. How Finn invited me to meet his work friends, only to mock me the whole night. How he dumped me in front of them like it was some kind of performance. How he left me sitting there, stuck with a $347 bill I couldn't even afford. Finn tried to cut in, tried to spin the narrative, but his dad gave him a look that shut it down. A look I'd never seen before. Disappointment with a capital D. Finn tried defending himself, claiming I was being dramatic, that I embarrassed him in front of his colleagues, that leaving me with the bill was supposed to teach me financial responsibility. His grandma actually snorted at that one. And then Griffin, quiet Griffin, finally spoke up. He backed me up without hesitation, said he'd overheard Finn bragging about the whole thing at work. He even pulled out his phone and showed texts from Mateo, where they joked about it. Straight receipts. Lila walked back in right as Finn was trying to twist the story one last time. She set the cake down and asked, "What did I miss?" For a second, no one said anything. Then Theo, calm as ever, said, "We need to have a family discussion about honesty." That's when Finn lost it. I mean, full-on meltdown mode. He yelled that I was turning his family against him, called Griffin a traitor. accused everyone of being jealous of his so-called success. Then he knocked over his water glass, pointed at me and shouted, "A girl like you should be grateful I even gave you the time of day." Lila gasped. His grandma muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like senior citizen swearing. Ava just shook her head like none of this surprised her one bit. Me? I stayed calm. I don't know how, but I did. I just looked at him and said, "You know what? The only thing I'm grateful for is finally seeing you for who you really are." Finn stormed out, slamming the front door hard enough to knock one of Lila's decorative plates off the wall. It hit the floor and cracked. After that, the air shifted. It was peaceful. A little surreal, sure, but peaceful. Lila apologized about 50 times. Theo looked like the life had been sucked out of him. Ava got up and mopped up the spilled water without saying a word. Griffin quietly said he was sorry too. Not for speaking up, but for how awkward it had all become. He said he just couldn't sit there and let Finn keep lying to everyone. And then the weirdest thing happened, they insisted I stay. For cake. So we sat there. Me, Finn's ex-girlfriend. Griffin, his coworker. His whole family. Eating birthday cake without the birthday boy. And somehow it wasn't awkward. At least not in the way you'd expect. Felt more like closure. After dessert, I helped Lila clean up in the kitchen. She kept saying she had no idea how deep the lies went. She wasn't just heartbroken over what he'd done to me. She was devastated over what kind of person her son had become. I felt for her honestly. No parent wants to face that. She asked if there had been signs before, and I admitted there were. But I ignored them. Because I wanted to believe in the version of Finn I thought I knew. When I was getting ready to leave, Theo pulled me aside. He thanked me. Not just for being honest, but for giving them a glimpse of what had really been going on. He looked so tired, like a man trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I told him, "It's not your fault. Finn made his own choices." Griffin offered to walk me to my car, like he could sense I needed a moment to breathe. On the way down the driveway, he told me that Finn had been spiraling at work for months, taking credit for other people's work, lying to the team, even faking emails from clients. He was already on thin ice and one step away from getting fired. And I just stood there for a second, letting it all hit me. The lies, the manipulation, the way he made me feel small for so long. And finally it was over. Suddenly it all kind of clicked. Finn's obsession with looking successful, how he constantly inflated his job, his lifestyle, even our relationship, it finally made this sad kind of sense. His whole identity was built on this fake version of himself, some polished image he thought people would respect. And when I saw it that way, I'll admit, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I thanked Griffin for backing me up and drove home, running on this weird mix of exhaustion and relief. Like when you finally get to take off an uncomfortable bra after a long day. Yeah, weird analogy, but you get the feeling, right? When I walked into my apartment, I saw 3 missed calls from Isla. She was obviously dying for an update. I was about to call her when my phone buzzed. Text from Finn, "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't reply. Just blocked his number, made some tea, and sat down. And honestly, I wasn't scared. I wasn't even upset. I just felt done. Tired, yeah, but also kind of proud. I'd finally stood up for myself. Thought that would be the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. The next morning, my phone blew up, 13 missed calls. Lila, Ava, Griffin, a few numbers I didn't even recognize. Something had clearly gone down overnight, and based on the frantic voicemails, Finn had completely lost it. Last update. Thanks for being patient while I sorted through everything. Also, shout out to my laptop for choosing that morning to do a surprise 4-hour update. So here's how it all unfolded. I woke up Sunday to a screen full of missed calls. My stomach dropped. For a second, I thought someone had died. 5 from Lila, 3 from Ava, 2 from Griffin, and 3 random numbers. The panic was real. I called Lila first. She answered on the first ring. She sounded exhausted. Apparently, after storming out of the birthday dinner, Finn went on a full meltdown tour. He showed up drunk at his ex-girlfriend's apartment, someone I didn't even know existed, around 2 a.m., shouting about how I'd ruined his life. The ex understandably freaked out and called Ava, who had to go pick him up. But wait, there's more. He spent the rest of the night rage texting practically everyone we knew. He sent Griffin threats saying he'd ruin him at work. Like, good luck with that, my guy, you're hanging onto your job by a thread. He also posted this long, rambly status on Facebook about how he was surrounded by snakes and how people were gonna regret betraying him. But the scariest part? He sent my home address in a private message to Mateo, saying he was going to make me pay for humiliating him. Luckily, Mateo, who apparently does have a conscience, immediately forwarded that to Lila and told her she needed to warn me. So there I was, sitting on my couch in my old pajamas, yesterday's messy bun still hanging on for dear life, while Lila kept apologizing like it was her fault. I probably should have been scared. But I wasn't. I felt drained. Like when your phone's stuck at 1% for hours and you're just waiting for it to die so you can finally recharge. Lila insisted on coming over just to make sure I was okay. It was sweet but also triggered a full-blown panic cleaning spree. You've never cleaned faster than when someone's mom is about to see your apartment. I was tossing laundry into closets, scrubbing toothpaste off the bathroom sink. It was chaos. When the doorbell finally rang, it wasn't just Lila. Ava was with her. They brought coffee and those little pastries from that bakery near their house, the ones I honestly might miss more than Finn himself. We sat around my tiny kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg I've been meaning to fix forever, and they filled me in on everything. Ava told me this wasn't new behavior. Apparently, Finn had a history of lying. In college, he claimed to be on the baseball team. He wasn't. Said he was dating some popular girl. She didn't even know his name. He'd been building fake versions of himself for years. As we talked, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Isla was texting nonstop, offering to come over with her boyfriend, who does kickboxing, just in case. Girl watches way too much Dateline, I swear. And my group chat? Total chaos. Everyone was screenshotting Finn's meltdown posts, trying to make sense of it all. That's when my doorbell rang again. I froze. My brain instantly jumped to what if it's Finn? Ava peeked through the blinds, then let out this long exhale. It's just Griffin, she said. He'd stopped by because Finn had been blowing up his phone too, apparently threatening to pay me a visit. Griffin figured it was better to warn me in person, just in case. So now it's me, Finn's mom, his sister, and his co-worker, all sitting in my living room on a Sunday morning, trying to figure out what to do about this grown man throwing a tantrum because he got caught lying. If I hadn't been so stressed, it might have been funny. Like, how do you even explain this to someone who wasn't there? Griffin told us that their boss had already seen Finn's social media meltdown. Someone had screenshotted it and passed it up the chain. So Monday? Yeah, it was gonna be interesting at the office. Ava looked genuinely worried. She was afraid Finn might do something stupid if he lost his job on top of everything else. Then my doorbell rang. Again. This time it was my building manager, super uncomfortable, clearly not loving this part of his job. He told me Finn had been downstairs, causing a scene in the lobby, demanding to be let up to my apartment. The manager refused, hero, and when he threatened to call the police, Finn lost it, screaming that I was a lying bitch, loud enough for the entire first floor to hear. Classy. Lila looked like she was about to cry. She kept apologizing over and over, saying she didn't know where they'd gone wrong with him. I genuinely felt bad for her. Must be brutal realizing your adult son is basically a walking red flag. Ava was more practical, told me to document everything, just in case. Smart move. We were still mid-discussion when my phone buzzed. Finn had tagged me in an Instagram story. I knew I shouldn't look. Everyone told me not to look. But of course I looked. It was an old photo, me, passed out on his couch, mouth open, from way early in our relationship. Captioned, Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect. And underneath, a girl like you should be grateful anyone took pictures of you at all. I burst out laughing. Lila looked startled. But honestly, if that was the best revenge he could come up with a bad angle from 2 years ago, I was gonna be just fine. Just as we were discussing what to do next, a loud banging hit my door. We all jumped. Then came his voice, slurred and angry. I know you're in there. Open the door. Griffin immediately stood up like he was going to face him, which was sweet, but unnecessary. I was already on the phone with building security. Perks of paying a little more for a place with an actual guard. Finn kept yelling, pounding harder. I could hear my neighbor's door creak open. Everyone in the hallway knew something was up. By the time security showed up, Finn had moved on to kicking the door. The guard didn't waste time. Told Finn to leave or the cops were coming. I couldn't hear everything they said, but a few tense minutes later it went quiet. The guard gently knocked and told me Finn had left the building but was still in the parking lot. Lila was mortified. She insisted on going down to talk to him herself, and honestly, I let her. She looked heartbroken. Theo had to come pick both of them up. It was just sad. After they left, Griffin and I just sat in silence on my couch for a while. Then he broke it with the most fitting question of the day. Do you have any alcohol? We ended up splitting a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Pretty sure this counted. By the time he left, it was late afternoon and I was completely drained. Isla came over and stayed the night, just in case Finn tried something else. He didn't, thankfully. We ordered pizza, watched trashy reality TV, and tried to process the fact that my life had turned into a full-blown soap opera. The weeks that followed? Total adjustment period. Finn got fired. Apparently he didn't show up for 3 days and sent some wildly inappropriate emails to coworkers. I only know this because Ava and I stayed in touch. She's actually super cool. We get coffee sometimes now. Finn moved back in with his parents temporarily. And yes, he still tried to reach out a few more times. Left voicemails that ranged from angry and unhinged to weepy and nostalgic to weirdly poetic. Like, bro, it's not a breakup song, you lied for 2 years and tried to kick down my door. I saved every voicemail, just in case, but I never replied. Finn being Finn, of course, didn't stop there. He made a few fake Instagram accounts trying to message me. They were laughably obvious. I mean, who else spells your as your and says you're making a big mistake, like it's a threat? Instant block. The weirdest part? I actually ran into him. Of all places, Target. It was about a month later. I was in the home section trying to choose between 2 shower curtains when I looked up and boom, there he was. Standing in the aisle holding a pack of socks looking like he hadn't slept in a week. We locked eyes for a second. I braced myself, thinking he might say something or cause a scene. But nope. He just turned and walked away. Left his basket right there on the floor and disappeared. That was 3 months ago. According to Lila, who still sends me holiday cards, which is sweet but also kind of awkward, Finn moved out of state to stay with his uncle. She said he needed a fresh start. Translation, his parents probably finally had enough. His social media? Dead silent. Ava thinks his family cut him off financially until he agrees to get therapy. Honestly, good move. As for me, I'm doing pretty great, actually. I finally rearranged my apartment. Got rid of all the stuff that reminded me of Finn, replaced the little things, shifted the energy. It finally feels like mine again. The weirdest outcome of all this? My friendship with Griffin. We're not dating or anything despite Isla's best matchmaking efforts, but we get lunch sometimes, send each other dumb TikToks, and talk like two people who've been through a very specific brand of drama together. It's nice having someone who gets it, who saw it all unfold and understands why I now have trust issues roughly the size of Texas. Looking back, I'm not angry anymore. Okay, not just angry. I'm also weirdly grateful. Not grateful that I dated Finn, definitely not that. But grateful that I got to see his true colors before I made any bigger life decisions. Before I moved in with him or even worse. Dodged a whole emotional freight train. Shudder.